You are standing in a city built almost entirely of wood, and you don't even realize it. Sidewalks made of pine planks, roofs shingled in tar, streets paved with wooden blocks soaked in oil to keep down the dust. It is October 8th, 1871, and Chicago is about to teach the world what happens when a city forgets it is flammable. The summer has been brutal. Barely 3 inches of rain since July. The wood in every building has dried out like kindling stacked and waiting. You can feel it in the air, that dry electric tension before something breaks. Firefighters have already fought a massive blaze the night before, one that burned for hours and exhausted horses, hoses, and men. Nobody has slept, nobody has rested, and nobody knows that the worst is still coming. Around 9 o'clock that Sunday night, a fire breaks out near a small barn on DeKoven Street. You've probably heard the story. A cow, a lantern, a careless kick. It's one of the most famous urban legends in American history. But is it even true? Historian Richard Bales spent years combing through the original 1871 investigation records, and what he found changed how historians talk about that night. There was no solid evidence the cow ever knocked over anything. The reporter who first wrote the story later admitted he made it up for a better headline. The real cause remains unknown to this day. Maybe a spark from a pipe. Maybe something else entirely. The truth burned along with everything else. What is certain is the speed. Within minutes, the fire has already jumped from the barn to a nearby shed. The wind that night is ferocious, gusting from the southwest, and it acts like a bellows on a forge. Flames leap from roof to roof, block to block, faster than any fire crew can respond. You can imagine what it must have felt like standing in the street, watching orange light climb into the sky where there had only been darkness a moment before. The fire department, already worn thin from the previous night's blaze, arrives late. A watchman at the courthouse cupola misreads the fire's location and sends engines to the wrong district. Precious minutes are lost. In a city built from timber, minutes are everything. By midnight, the fire has crossed the Chicago River, a barrier that should have stopped it. It doesn't. Embers ride the wind like burning confetti, landing on rooftops blocks ahead of the main blaze, igniting new fires before the old ones even reach them. The historian Carl Smith, who studied the cultural memory of the disaster, described it as a firestorm that behaved almost like a living thing, consuming faster than human beings could think or plan. Can you picture what it means to lose a city in real time? Not gradually. Not over years. In hours. Families flee with whatever they can carry. Some run toward the lake, wading into Lake Michigan itself just to escape the heat, standing in the cold water through the night as the sky above them turns into a wall of fire. Others crowd onto bridges, only to watch the bridges themselves catch fire from the heat radiating off the water. There is nowhere that feels safe. The air itself seems to be burning. The Chicago Water Works, the very building meant to pump water to fight the flames, catches fire and collapses before dawn. Without it, there is no water pressure anywhere in the city. The firefighters who remain are now fighting one of the largest urban fires in American history with nothing but buckets and desperation. You have to wonder what it must have been like to watch your entire life disappear into smoke within a single night, knowing that the very system built to protect you had failed at the worst possible moment. By the time the fire finally burns itself out on the morning of October 10th, after a light rain finally helps slow it, roughly 3.5 square miles of the city are gone. More than 17,000 buildings destroyed. An estimated 100,000 people, nearly a third of the entire population, left without homes. The official death toll stands around 300, though many historians believe the real number was far higher, since so many victims and records were never fully identified in the chaos. What strikes researchers most, even a century and a half later, is not just the destruction, but what happened next. Urban historian Christine Meisner-Rosen studied the rebuilding of American cities after great fires, and Chicago became her central case study. She found that the disaster, as horrific as it was, triggered one of the fastest and most transformative rebuilding efforts in American urban history. Within days, architects and investors were already planning a new Chicago. Within 2 years, much of the burned district had new buildings rising from the ash. This is where the city's famous skyscraper era quietly begins. New fire codes required brick and stone instead of wood. New engineering ambitions replaced old habits of building fast and cheap. Isn't it strange that the same fire that erased a city also, in a way, built the one we know today? The human stories are harder to measure than the buildings. families who lost everything they owned in a single night, immigrants who had spent years building small businesses, gone in hours, children separated from parents in the panic, some never reunited. Relief efforts poured in from across the country and even from Europe. Food, clothing, money, lumber, an outpouring of aid that revealed just how deeply this single night had shaken the nation's sense of what a modern city could survive. There is also a quieter, less discussed layer to this story. For years, the tragedy fell heaviest on the shoulders of one immigrant family, the O'Learys, who were blamed publicly for decades despite the total lack of evidence. Catherine O'Leary, the woman blamed by name in early reports, spent the rest of her life avoiding reporters, refusing interviews, living with a reputation she never deserved. It's a reminder that disasters don't only destroy buildings, sometimes they destroy reputations too, unfairly, and for generations. So why does this fire still matter today, more than 150 years later? Because it changed how cities think about risk. Fire codes across the United States were rewritten in the years following 1871. Building materials shifted permanently away from wood in dense urban centers. Fire departments modernized. Water systems were redesigned with redundancy in mind, so no single building's collapse could cripple an entire city's defenses again. In many ways, the modern American fire code exists because Chicago burned. It also changed how we tell stories about disaster. The cow and the lantern were never true, but the myth endured for well over a century because it was simple, memorable, and easy to blame. Real history is messier. A drought, a worn-out fire department, a misread signal from a watchtower, a gust of wind at exactly the wrong moment. No single villain. Just a chain of small failures that added up to something catastrophic. You are not standing in a city built almost entirely of wood anymore. You are standing in a world Chicago's ashes helped design. One built with the hard lesson that a single spark in the wrong conditions can undo everything a city took generations to build.